All right, so welcome everyone to another deep dive. And this time we're going all the way back to 1966.
Ooh, 1966.
Yeah, to the very founding of the National Organization for Women, or NOW.
Okay.
And we're going to be looking at their statement of purpose from that year.
Right.
Which really is like a time capsule of, this moment when this huge movement for women's rights was just getting started.
Yeah.
So we thought it'd be really interesting to dive into this document and sort of see what were the big issues that they were tackling?
Yeah.
What were their goals and, how much progress has been made since then?
Right. And what still resonates with us today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's start with, the kind of the core argument of NW's statement of purpose.
Okay.
And it's really that women are first and foremost human beings, and they're entitled to full equality. Which is like, reading it now, it seems so obvious, right?
Yeah, you think so. Yeah.
But back then, this is actually a pretty radical idea.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about the social and political context of the 1960s. A woman's place was, largely seen as being in the home. And so to come out and say, women deserve equal rights and opportunities, this was like a direct challenge to that whole way of thinking.
Yeah, and it's amazing how, they didn't just kind of make this statement and leave it at that.
Right.
They were really committed to action.
Yeah.
They talk about boycotts. They talk about putting pressure on legislatures.
Yeah.
Challenging discriminatory practices.
Yeah, just taking it to the streets.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I just wonder, if you'd been alive back then.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being part of that movement?
Well, it must have been so exciting, right? Like you really felt like your voice could make a difference.
Yeah, totally.
And what's so cool is they didn't just talk about these abstract ideas of equality. They got really specific about the inequalities women faced.
Oh, yeah.
Like the wage gap, for example.
Right.
They point out that women were earning something like 60% of what men were making.
Yeah, it's great.
And they were getting, they were increasingly getting more education, but it didn't seem to matter.
Yeah, that's so interesting because they really connected education to economic power for women. Which seems like kind of ahead of its time.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, they were saying, look, the wage gap isn't just about outright discrimination. It's also about women not having the same access to education and professional training.
Yeah.
They specifically call for equal opportunities for women in fields like law and medicine, which were, at the time totally dominated by men.
Makes sense. And, and so they're talking about equal pay for equal work. They're talking about breaking down these barriers in education and professions.
Yeah.
But they also go beyond that.
Right.
They address this whole idea that women have to choose between having a family or having a career.
Yeah. This is where that whole idea of work-life balance that we talk about today really starts to kind of come out,
They recognize that, the lack of affordable childcare was forcing women to make the impossible choice.
Yeah.
Stay at home or pursue a career.
Right.
And they were like, no true equality means having practical solutions like subsidized childcare.
Yeah.
So that women can have both,
Right. It's like they understood that it wasn't just about changing laws. It was about changing the whole structure of society.
Exactly.
To actually make it possible for women to, participate fully.
Yeah. And that brings us to another really key part of their vision.
Okay.
Which is political representation.
Right. They didn't just want a seat at the table.
Right.
They wanted full-on equal representation, in political parties, in government, and all these decision-making bodies.
Absolutely. And I think if you connect that to everything else they were talking about, it becomes clear that they saw political power as the key to achieving all those other goals.
Right.
Without women actually in positions of influence.
Yeah. How are you going to push for things like equal pay or access to education or affordable childcare?
Makes sense. But I'm curious, all of this focuses on, these traditional political structures, right? What about, the power of grassroots activism?
That's an interesting point. And while the statement of purpose does primarily focus on those formal structures, it also acknowledges that activism and advocacy are absolutely crucial for driving social change. Okay,
so I guess looking back at NOW's vision from 1966, what do you think is the most relevant issue today?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I think their call for affordable childcare really resonates with me. You know, even today, like the lack of affordable quality childcare is still a huge barrier for so many women.
Yeah, especially working mothers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a reminder that we've come a long way, but there's still so much work to do.
Totally. I mean, NRW's vision was incredibly ambitious, right?
Yeah.
They were tackling not just the legal barriers, but like the societal expectations that were limiting women's choices. And it's just amazing how many of the issues they raised are still so relevant today.
Yeah.
So I would really encourage everyone listening to check out NOW's full statement of purpose.
Yeah, it's online.
Yeah, it's really easy to find online, and it's just such a fascinating glimpse into, you know, the origins of the fight for women's equality.
Yeah.
So what aspect of their vision resonates most with you? And why? And until next time, keep diving.
Bye.